Hello, everyone. Today we are sitting down with Jordana Goldlist, a very successful and prominent criminal lawyer uh, based in Toronto. Without further ado, throw it over to Jordana.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on your show. Like you said, I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I'm based in downtown Toronto, though I take cases throughout Ontario now, mostly in Southern Ontario. My practice is focused on defending people charged with homicide offenses, firearm offenses, and drug trafficking. Those are really the three main categories of criminal offenses that I represent people on. I've been running my own practice now since 2015. Prior to that, I worked with one of Canada's, at the time, largest criminal defense firms. I was with them for about 5 years, so starting in 2010. And for 2 years before that, I was a civil litigator. So I practiced in civil litigation, starting from my articles, and then stayed with the firm as an associate for 2 years. And I just got bored. It wasn't my thing. It wasn't. It was a fantastic law firm. I learned a lot about being a lawyer through civil litigation. So I certainly don't regret the years that I spent, but I wanted to delve more into the heart of the cases that I was working on. And I felt like civil litigation more danced around the peripheries and the procedures. And so I made the switch in 2010 and I've never looked back.
That's really cool. That's really awesome. It's so interesting always to hear about how different lawyers kind of get where they are because it is so like personal and so specific to everyone and kind of what their interests are and how that shifts because it's not different for I mean, it's not the same for everyone, right? So, we're kind of just gonna kick off the conversation with a little bit more about maybe what you think are some important qualities for someone to develop before getting into the legal system, and like what experiences do you think are really valuable to getting into the legal system, especially in your field of law, which is like advocacy and criminal and all that stuff. Do you find that there's kind of a pattern of some common qualities, traits, or experiences that help assist in that field?
So I don't think criminal lawyers are necessarily of a particular mold. In fact, there are, thousands and thousands of criminal defense lawyers for tens of thousands of clients. And so a lot of people think that they're, for example, not aggressive enough or not abrasive enough, or, they're too compassionate. And I don't agree. I think that everyone brings their own experience to the table, and there is a certain type of client for every type of lawyer. So there are some clients that need a lawyer who is very compassionate and patient and understanding. And so I don't think that you necessarily have to be one set of characteristics to be successful. That said, I think if you're going to be a successful criminal lawyer, you definitely need some skill sets across the board, no matter what your personality is. So for example, you have to be very comfortable speaking in front of a large crowd. So I am often talking to juries during trials where there are plenty of people observing the trials. And so I know some lawyers that are not comfortable doing public speaking or speaking in big groups. So if that's your personality, you're probably not well suited for criminal law, and or certainly not the type of criminal law that's going to lead you to be doing jury trials. You'll probably prefer a different area of the law. But everybody's personal experience is really what we bring when we're serving clients, right? That's how we have a level of understanding and commonality. It's where you gain trust. It's where you develop those relationships. So I think that everyone's unique personal experience is really what makes them a better lawyer. You need to be able to tap into those experiences and think, how is my history going to help me, bridge the gap of understanding with my clients?
That's awesome. Yeah. So you touch on personal experience a lot. So at what point in your career or in your journey to becoming a lawyer did you figure out that practicing criminal law specifically was for you?
I think I always felt like it was for me, given my history. You know, I spent my teens out on the streets. I spent my teens really struggling. And then, you know, even into my 20s, I was dabbling in a few different worlds. And so I always had an association, obviously, with people who are involved in criminal activity. And then I got to law school and I felt like I needed to completely disengage from that life and from those people in order to sort of embrace this new life with me as a quote unquote lawyer. You know, I'm a lawyer now. I can't have that following me. And so I tried to completely divorce my own history from what I saw as being my future. And you can't do that. We as people cannot do that. I don't think you can ever divorce yourself from your own history. And I was in second year of law school, and there was, you know, people, my classmates were discussing a fact pattern involving people, and they really ignored the client in trying to come up with the solution. And they were just focused on the law and they were focused on the procedure. And in my mind, I thought, well, what if I was the person who was charged? What would I want to have my lawyer do? And I realized that nobody in the class was thinking about it from the perspective of the person who was charged, the accused. And it was then that I realized, like, it's really easy for me to slip into that because of my history. It's easy for me to think about, oh, what if I was charged? I've been charged and I've been lived, like, you know, I've lived that life. And so it was sort of in that moment that I was like, I think I've got a different understanding than my colleagues because of my own personal experience. At the time, I mean, we're going back many, many years. I thought it was going to hinder me, if I was honest. And I thought that I needed to sort of have that separation. And that's why I started in civil litigation. You know, everyone around me was like, oh, you got to leave that life behind and just be a lawyer. And part of my frustration in civil was because I felt like my own personal experiences were not being utilized in a way that was either helpful for me or my clients. And so I quickly realized when I made the switch to criminal law that I could take that understanding and use it without necessarily sharing about what my history was, because I also, you know, don't do that with my clients. It's not about storytelling, but because of my understanding and my sort of unique perspective, I use that to sort of gain trust and let the client know that I understand where they're coming from, even if I'm not in their same position.
So it's actually funny that we kind of talk about this because Nader and I were talking right before meeting with you about how in Canada, or I think at least in Alberta, when you get called to the bar, you have to like apply for that. But if you have a DUI or some sort of like plagiarism mark on your transcript, you can get denied, right? So do you think that because the that's kind of like a requirement, do you think that limits people's perspectives who are entering the legal field, especially in regards to maybe the narrow-mindedness when it comes to like criminal defense?
So we have that in Ontario. The Law Society requires us to fill out forms to say that we're of good character. You know, when I did that, I obviously answered truthfully. I had never been convicted of fraud. I had never, you know, been expelled from, I think they had a post-secondary education. My charges were all as a youth, and at the time they were under the former Youth Justice Act, which I think that when it was like a 3-year period had lapsed without any convictions, your record was automatically sealed. So, I mean, I looked into all of that while I was in law school, and I actually had a lawyer check for me whether or not my, you know, truthful answers to the law studies questions were going to hinder my ability to get called, and they weren't, more so on account of my age, right? I didn't start law school till I was 25. So when I was graduating 3 years later and my last conviction had been at 18 or maybe 17 years old, enough time had passed that it wasn't going to affect me. That said, I have a very good friend of mine who's a licensed paralegal that had to go through the same process. He has a 4-page record, including crimes of drug trafficking, firearms offenses, and robberies. It took him 2 years and a real battle with the Law Society, but eventually he was able to prove that he is of good character despite having this criminal record. So yes, it was harder for him to get that designation and to be called, but he did it. And I think that the more people who are doing it, I know right now in Ontario, there's a licensed lawyer who has a manslaughter conviction. I know of a licensed lawyer with a armed robbery conviction. And again, these are, you know, dated records, people who have turned their life around, people who have said, you know, my history will actually make me a better advocate for the clients I know I'm going to service. And even if it takes a little bit longer and some extra work to prove it to the law society, you know, putting in that work and then proving it will help us to change that stigma.
No, that's definitely very, very interesting, that you bring all of that up, how oftentimes mistakes that you've made in the past can really come back to haunt you, and it takes a lot to come back from that. I guess looking at your history and experiences through undergrad, through law school, and then eventually through your articles, what would be your biggest suggestion for students really interested in pursuing a career in law?
Just to follow their passion. I mean, I think that the question I'm most frequently asked from law students is, how do you figure out what type of lawyer you want to be? I mean, everybody gets to law school and on day one, they want to pigeonhole themselves into a particular type of law. So they want to do real estate, or they want to do criminal. They want to, you know, they think they know. Learn everything, take everything, explore everything. Law school is a wonderful opportunity to understand how vast the law really is. There are so many things you can do with a law degree. And then let your passion guide you. I know that sounds like probably super cheesy, but it's so true. If you wake up every Monday and you're like, oh fuck, it's Monday, you're not doing what you should be doing with your life. Like, period. If you wake up dreading Monday and you're at the start of your career and you've got another 30 or 40 years to go, man, you got to pick something else. You should be waking up and saying, I get to do A, B, and C. Even if those things are nerve-wracking and stressful, like the type of cases I do, they're nerve-wracking, they're stressful. I'm dealing with people that are at their worst or in the worst possible situation they can be at. And the easiest person to yell at is their lawyer. You know, I've got clients that I'm the only person that'll pick up their phone calls. So when they're upset and they're frustrated, they're having a bad day, or they're scared, you know, they're going to call me, and they're oftentimes unpleasant phone calls. So there's certainly parts of the job that I don't love. But when I step back from those instances and think of everything I get to do in my career, I'm still excited by it. It's been 12 years and I still wake up and love what I do. So as a student, you know, figure out what areas of the law interest you, not just the ones that you're just getting through or thinking you're going to slug your way through to get that paycheck. I don't think anything's worth it, really.
I think that's a really actually important piece of advice for everyone, regardless of what stage you're in working, whether it's undergrad, law school, articles. Really just reflect on what you're working on and whether that makes you happy, because ultimately, if you're just dragging yourself through an undergraduate degree, through a major that you don't enjoy, you're not going to be able to attain that competitive GPA for law school and really just like hone your skills. So that's one thing that we suggest to a lot of our members is really just focus in on what you enjoy and what you're passionate about, and the rest will come. The GPA will come, the LSAT will come. That can be figured out later. So that's one of the questions we get a lot is majors and
yeah, it's kind of interesting because, you know, there's the standard majors that kind of go into law school, which is like political science, business, criminology. And I noticed that yours was philosophy, right? Yeah. So do you find that like that any experience you had in philosophy carried out into law school or in the legal field that gave you maybe a different perspective on that kind of stuff? Or did you find that when you were in law school or even now in the legal field, that people from certain maybe educational backgrounds bring a different edge to the field?
Yeah, I mean, we all bring our experience and knowledge to the field. For me, you know, philosophy is all about logic and reasoning and rationality and, you know, theorizing. And I mean, I took argumentation theory for years. And so you're really learning how to deconstruct and reconstruct an argument. That's philosophy. That's what I do with every trial, right? You sit back and you think, how do I want to present these facts, and how am I going to make my argument so the judge accepts it? And so, yes, there are transferable skills in most, if not every discipline. But I went to law school with people who majored in history, who majored in art, you know, science for sure. I don't think what you major in necessarily is going to either, you're right, you need a good GPA for sure. Having oral advocacy skills is certainly beneficial. Having written advocacy skills is beneficial. So, you know, you're going to get that from a majority of the liberal arts degrees. So then it becomes a question of exactly finding what you enjoy and what you do well. And I find that usually if you're doing something you enjoy, you're good at it because you really want to put that effort in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm just gonna jump back in our conversation. Earlier, you were saying kind of you don't want to wake up on a Monday and say, like, I hate this, why am I doing this? So how do you, like, the legal field is very rigoring. It's a lot of case after case after case, hours after hours after hours. How do you avoid burnout and kind of maintain personal relationships while still having that work-life balance?
I don't have work-life balance. Work-life balance is a fallacy. Work-life balance does not exist if you're going to be a successful lawyer. But again, if you're enjoying it, you don't really need that like 50-50 balance, right? You like what you do, you pour yourself into it. I think when you know, including, so the time that I spend in court, the time that I spend in the office, meetings, preparation, the business side of things, advertising, you know, Instagram takes a lot of my time, but that's the only place that I consider, you know, where I advertise. I don't pay for CSOs. I don't bother with Google. I don't spend any time on Twitter. So for me, it's all Instagram. But when I add up everything that I do in order to build my career and build my brand, I probably average 90 to 100 hours a week. Like there is not a lot of room outside of that. So, you know, I go to the gym. That for me is an outlet. I try once a week to do like a social outing where I'm seeing friends, spending time with my partner who is also a workaholic, which obviously works out well. You know, it's about finding the lifestyle that makes sense to you. Now, I have my own certain goals that not everyone has. A lot of people are comfortable at a certain level. And so you have to figure out what your comfort level is. What are you working towards, right? Like, are you happy in a Mercedes S-Class or do you want to drive a Ferrari? If you want to drive a Ferrari and you don't have a trust fund, you're going to put the hours in. You have to work that much harder to get to where you want to go. Now, not everyone wants to work that hard and not everyone has those goals. So again, it's also a matter of some self-reflection, right? What is it that you want out of your career? Do you want a 9 to 5 where you're, you know, feeling good going home, helping people? If that's the case, then maybe you want to work, you know, at a legal aid clinic. Maybe you want to do duty counsel work where you don't take the work home with you. You don't have you know, you don't need to go out and get clients. Your clients are handed to you. Which takes away from all of the time and effort spent building the business. So, you know, I think everyone needs to sit back and reflect on what their own goals are and how hard they're willing to work for them, right? Like everyone wants something handed to them. That's obviously not the reality of life. So it's a question of how hard you want to work for the things or the lifestyle you want to have. And that will help you determine, you know, your work-life balance. If you're not prepared to work 80 to 100 hours a week, then, you know, maybe you're not going to have the Ferrari that you feel like you deserve. I don't know. I think that's just the way that I sort of think of things in my mind.
Mm-hmm. So then, do you ever feel like no matter how you work, like, do you feel like you've accomplished everything you want to do by being a lawyer? Do you feel like sometimes you can be prevented from helping people in a certain way because of the system itself, or maybe your own morals or something specific outside of that?
Oh, there's so much to unpack there. So to answer your first part of the question, no, I definitely don't think I'm even close to the goals that I have. I am forever moving the bar. That said, when I started this journey, I never thought I'd get even close to where I'm at. I thought I was just going to live a life and be comfortable and sort of a 9 to 5 and sort of not 9 to 5, but like coast through, my first few years of civil litigation. It was like we'd start at 8:30 or 9, I'd work till 7. It was a comfortable lifestyle, and it was comfortable. And then I wanted more. And that's just the nature of my personality. I have always wanted more. Whatever it is that I'm doing, I want more of. And I'm prepared to work harder, and I'm prepared to do what it takes, but I'm always moving that bar up. And so, no, even with where I am at today and the things I have and the lifestyle I have, I see what's next, and I'm always thinking about what's next.
So, and just kind of to build on that a little bit more, like given the sensitive nature of your practice of criminal justice, criminal law, do you ever feel like you struggle with balancing your moral values while practicing in that area? And are there like any cases you avoid taking because of that?
There are cases I avoid taking, but not necessarily because I think anything impedes on my own morals. It's a tricky question. I'm not out committing crimes with my clients. I'm not out endorsing the crimes that they commit. I'm not perpetuating the crimes that they commit. My job is to defend them. And that, to me, I see as a job against the system, right? The Crown has a duty to prove the allegations. I have a duty to resist the Crown. If the Crown and the police do their job, they will succeed. And there's nothing I can do to stop it. I think that being a lawyer who works in accordance with their own sort of moral and ethical duties just means you don't lie in court. It means that you don't deceive in court. It means that you practice in an ethical manner. It means that you do the things you're hired to do. And I think that when you're in compliance with your own sort of ethical obligations as a lawyer, they can't conflict with your own personal morals, because you're not the one who did anything your client is accused of. Nor are you endorsing or saying it's okay. When I represent someone who's killed someone, I'm not taking the position that murder is acceptable. I'm just taking the position that this person is innocent unless and until the Crown can prove them guilty. And if the Crown can prove them guilty, there's nothing I can do to stand in the way. I'm not going to go and, interfere with a witness in order to help my client. That's a breach of our own ethical duties as lawyers. So no, I don't think that anything that I do could possibly conflict with my own morals, given what my role actually is in the system, right? I'm not hiding the body. I'm just saying that it wasn't my client who put it there. So, I think that when you actually understand the role of a criminal lawyer, you realize that whatever their morals are, and the vast majority of us have strong moral character, that we're not endorsing the behavior of our clients just because we're defending our clients. That said, there's crimes that I don't defend people on, again, not because it interferes with my morals per se, but there's things in life you can't unsee. There's things in life you read that you can't undo in your own mind. And our time here is limited. All of us. Whatever we do, this time is gone. This half hour or 45 minutes that we're spending together, we are not doing anything else that we could be doing other than this. And when you recognize that your time is finite, you have to think, what is the best use of my time? What is it that I want to do with the limited time on earth that I have here? And so when it comes to my practice, I don't want to spend my time reading about child abuse. I don't want to spend my time reading about, harm caused to animals. I don't want to see pictures of that. I don't want to be involved in that. And so I have a practice that I've always made it a rule that I don't represent anyone accused of harming children, animals, the elderly. I don't do sex assault cases. And again, not because I'm a feminist screaming me too. I just don't like them. I don't like the law on sex assault for reasons that could be an entire other podcast. But for me, I don't enjoy it. Whether I win or lose, whether I'm successful or not, whether the case is lucrative or not, it doesn't matter. There's, you know, there's things in life that are more important than money for me. And so I want to spend my time doing the things that I actually enjoy, and at the end of which I'm likely to feel good about. So that's how I embrace my practice.
I think you bring up some really strong points there, and really everyone needs to take a moment to just consider what that means for them. Like you said, our time is finite here, and how we choose to spend it is ultimately at our discretion, but we just need to make sure we're doing what we are truly passionate about. And going back to your point, discussing about how I guess you're constantly moving the bar for like up for yourself. Do you ever feel trapped in the system? Do you ever feel like trapped in, I guess the best way to put it is capitalism? If you're constantly trying to succeed or move forward in these ideas that we have in society about being successful and driving a Ferrari, and how has that played into your career? Do you ever, like, what was the most frustrating point in your career, I guess, is the best way to put it?
I'm a capitalist, so I'm not stuck in capitalism because I wholeheartedly endorse it. So that to me is not a sticking point at all. And again, I mean, this profession has a place for everybody. So, you know, if someone's a socialist and they just want to fight for the rights of the disadvantaged, there are plenty of opportunities to do that. Meaningful opportunities, wonderful opportunities. And for those of us that are capitalist in nature and we want to work really hard and make as much money as we can so that we can live the lifestyle we want to live, this profession has got its arms wide open. So you've got a choice. I don't think that when you decide to be a lawyer, you have to pigeonhole yourself into a particular, you know, socioeconomic philosophy in order to make it work. You know, that's the beauty of this profession. It is open to anyone. Do I feel trapped in the system? I am not trapped anywhere. I could leave tomorrow. I could liquidate my assets and set myself up a shack at the edge of the ocean in the Cayman Islands and be perfectly happy. So no, I am never trapped anywhere. I think the system is a trap for those who enter it. And that's a different conversation. Me personally, I'm not trapped in anything. I'm not arrested. I have a clean record. I have money. I can go go where I want and do what I want. It's more if I want to fold up my practice and pick a new career, I could do that. That to me, you know, is the beauty of financial freedom. You are never trapped when you have financial freedom, which is why it's been, you know, a goal of mine since undergrad. So that said, is the system a trap? The system is absolutely a trap. A lot of people say the system is broken. It's not broken at all. It's working exactly as it was designed. It was designed to keep groups of individuals trapped in a cycle of recidivism, and it's doing just that. It's doing the job it was created. Do I think the system needs to be redesigned? Absolutely. The stated goals of the system and the functioning of the system are not aligned.
You mentioned about your firm earlier. What made you, like, in your journey, decide to open up your own practice as opposed to maybe joining one that's been established for a while now, or you know, of that caliber?
So I worked at a fantastic firm for 5 years. I started my journey in criminal defense at a firm. And within a couple of years, I built up sort of my own practice within the firm. So I was working on my own cases. I developed, you know, my own clientele. I had my own student. I had my own assistant. So I sort of had my own firm, but within a firm. I wanted to do things different. There was no vertical management in the firm, which meant when files came in, it wasn't assigned to one lawyer who was going to represent the client from start to finish. And so oftentimes clients were very frustrated because they didn't know who their lawyer was. Their lawyer was a firm of 30 lawyers. And so they didn't know who to call and who to answer to, and there was no one that was really accountable to them. And I saw it being a source of frustration over and over again. And so I think I was in year 4 that I went to my boss and suggested very, not forcefully, that maybe a different model might be better. Now, who the hell was I? I'm 4 years out and he's been doing this for 35 years. And, it wasn't my place to tell him how to run his firm, and still, wouldn't be. But I thought my clients were not receiving the type of representation they wanted, even though, nobody was selling them out. It wasn't the type of customer service they wanted. I'll put it that way. And it wasn't this sort of relationship building that I wanted. And the more serious my cases got, the more I felt like that relationship was really important. And I was trying to build those relationships, but when I was being bombarded with other clients and other work to be done, I was trying to work in one model and it just wasn't the model of the firm. And so I had spoken to my boss about it. I had spoken to him about our compensation setup, which I also didn't agree with. We were on straight salary. I wanted to be on a commission base because I knew how much work I was bringing in. And so there was just a breakdown. I wanted to do things, I guess, my own way. And, I think when I'm 30 years out, some junior's not going to tell me how to run my practice either. And given the way that his practice was set up, it made sense for him. It just wasn't working for me. And so I wanted to do things my way. So I opened up my own practice, like I said, 5 years out in 2015. A lot of learning curves, a lot of errors, a lot of mistakes. Students always ask me, how do I avoid mistakes? You can't avoid mistakes. Make them and learn from them. If you make the same mistake twice, that's a problem. But you're going to make mistakes. It's just part of life. So I made a lot of mistakes. I learned from them. I'm still learning from them. I try different, procedures. I change things the way that we run at the office. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't work, we just, you got to learn to adjust.
So I guess speaking to learning from your mistakes, what would you say the most important life lesson you've learned that you can really just advise the students we're speaking to right now? What would be the most important life lesson you've learned?
It sounds so cliche, but our time is limited. And I think that you have to go through certain things in life for that to actually hit home. I always knew that, but I never appreciated how quickly life can change and how quickly certain events can alter, the course of your life. And I can't stress to students enough the importance of just following your heart. When I was in law school and leading into law school, a lot of people were just concerned about how much money they were going to make, or how much work-life balance they were going to have, or how much free time they were going to have. If you're starting your career wondering how much time you're going to spend not working, you've picked the wrong career. Mm-hmm. So just follow your heart. If there's something that you love, if you're, passionate about animals, do animal law, volunteer at the Humane Society. Don't worry about what your employers are going to think about it, because you're going to find the right employer who's going to say, wow, that's really meaningful experience. I love that. I love that you're compassionate. I love that this is how you're spending your time. Like, there will always be a need for a vast variety of people. So don't live your life wondering whether or not someone down the road will acknowledge what you're doing. Just do what you think and feel is in your best interest, and everything out, the other pieces fall into place. And I can't explain why, they just do.
I guess on that note, our time is finite, like you said, right? So that's kind of all we had for you. This was so insightful. I really respect the way that you communicate in such a free and firm manner. I think it's you definitely answered a lot of questions that we personally had, as well as I know a lot of students came up and asked us, and I'm like, I don't have this experience to give you a response, but you definitely hit a lot of the nails on the head, as they say. So yeah, I guess that's kind of what we have on our side.
And on behalf of the entire UALC, thank you so much again for sitting down with us and really just giving us that insight. It's been very valuable, and we hope that you've enjoyed it as much.
I have. I hope you guys and your students learn from it. you know, I didn't have a lot of guidance myself going from undergrad to law school, and that's why I really always aim to make the time to try to help students navigate that, because it's difficult. Everybody struggles with it, everybody. So if I can say or do something to help, you know, lessen that struggle in someone else, I always believe that that's time well spent.
Right. Well, thank you so much. And thanks to everyone who's listening. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. It was really interesting, and I hope it answered some questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Have a wonderful day.
You too.